We are going to move to two bills, to 49 and to 118 by Senator Black and Senator Moon. And you guys can proceed, present. I know Senator Black did have to leave afterwards, so proceed when you're ready, senators.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, for the record, Senator Rusty Black, representing the 12th Senatorial District, the great northwest part of the state. You may hear that again later this morning. This bill, in summary, something that a person from home that I'm very good friends with has talked to me about this for several years. I think it's been 4 or 5, and this summer, I guess I had a decision to try to bring this forward as we discuss the mental health issues, problems and stresses of both staff as well as students in schools across our state, really, and across our nation. I did some study and met with Rocky Malloy and his wife that were part of this organization, or started the organization, and it is in several countries throughout the Western Hemisphere, and looked at the results. It made me more interested in pursuing this as somebody that taught for 33 years and believe that this is truly a crisis that we have going on in our schools with students after the effect of COVID, et cetera. But again, not to just absorb this from one side. I talked to Dr. Gwaltney, that I hope everybody knows, that's setting up here for sure, and what he provides us as legislators, the information that he can find for us that's unbiased and provided great insight in the idea that I do believe this is something that we need to discuss and talk about. And I want to thank Dr. Gwaltney. I read stuff again last night before I went to bed. I didn't make it through all the research stuff. I did the highlighted portions, not the hundreds of pages, but the highlighted portions. Bringing all that to conclusion, school chaplains offer an opportunity for students and really the faculty to have somebody that they can talk to that talks and listens as fast as I do with real care about what is getting said, and it's a private person. As somebody worked in schools, administrators have jobs. There are things as a staff member, you do not feel comfortable talking about administrator because you understand what position you put them in. Students with teachers. Some teachers can do that, and I understand why some students wouldn't want to talk to you, because I had reporting things that I had to do, and I wrote those letters and had parents beating the hell out of my door because I wrote something and they had threatened the school and they were not very happy. But for those of you that know how our system works, I've got an administrator in the room, I had no choice but do that or I lost my job, right? Whether I believe they were physically going to do anything or not, they showed up at my house threatening. It was a requirement that I ended up having. This person brings ease. We have chaplains all over. I have a chaplain in this building that I confide in on a daily basis about even some of my good friends when I'm not getting along with my good friends.
That never happens.
And as we laugh a little bit and I get ready to go, I think we really need to look at this, the results. If Senator Moon and I bring those around to you and anybody even testifying opposed to this, if you look at what has happened in other places that have done this, it's awful hard to say not to try it. Because another thing, neither one of us are forcing anything.
Right.
It will be that school's choice. So with that, I am going to leave here in a few minutes to go to that. So if anybody has any direct questions, you can catch me another time and I'll answer those. I do have facts and figures if you don't have them.
All right. Well, we have witnesses too that are going to provide a lot of facts and figures as well. So you did good on that explanation. And I'm Mike Moon. I represent the 29th Senate District. And Senator, I'm not sure if you took the wind out of my sails or blew wind into my sails. You did good on that explanation, and I just want to add just a few things. Senator Black mentioned that this is a voluntary, it could be a paid position too. It's up to the school district, and that's the bottom line. The school district would have the choice whether or not to implement this policy or not. But when you look at chaplaincy, it predates the Constitution. And we have chaplains in the military, in prisons, police, fire departments, even professional sports teams have chaplains. But we don't have them in public schools. I think it's high time, as Senator Black mentioned, that we do this because the time is right for that. And chaplains provide emotional support, they provide friendships, and they can provide emotional support as well, encouragement, I meant to say, for students and the staff. And so, as I mentioned, this act authorizes a public school district or public charter school to either employ or to authorize a volunteer chaplain in their school system. And so we have witnesses who will answer a lot of the questions that you might have. We'd be happy to try right now if you want to, but are there any questions for us?
Senator, proceed.
Good morning, Senators. Thanks for being here this morning. So would you start off by sharing who determines if someone is a chaplain?
There is an 80-hour training requirement. So once that 80 hours is completed, that would essentially be the determining factor.
Okay, and is any faith leader allowed to attend that training? So we could have an imam or a rabbi or a Catholic priest or nun?
And that
become
would
a
be
chaplain?
ultimately up to the school district.
Okay. So one of the things you mentioned in your testimony was sharing how we have chaplains in lots of different public sectors, the military, chaplains for first responders, certainly in our prisons. And again, one of the things that has been pointed out time and time again from numerous trained chaplains from lots of different denominations is that many individuals cannot access their religious services. For example, if you're deployed in the military or if you're in prison, you don't have an opportunity to go to an outside worship service. Public school children don't face, and this is directly from their letter that they penned in June of 2024, public school children do not face the barriers to religious exercise that service members, prisoners, and even patients face. Now, when we start looking at this, and I understand again, and I think Senator Black did a nice job explaining, we understand that in many of our schools, we are facing a shortage of counselors, school resource officers, et cetera, to really have time to meet with students. So I understand your concerns bringing this forward, but I also have concerns as to how we would screen folks who want to come in. So our certification is needed or not needed?
No certification required, but
okay. And then would, if they're allowed to come in, are they also allowed to teach a class?
They could.
As a non-certified teacher?
They could.
Okay.
Now, let me add on to that a little bit and ask Senator Black if he wants to continue.
For that one?
Yeah, you can gavel me if you want to. But anyone on this committee here, and Senator Black included, anyone out in the audience perhaps, I could go to them, since you touched me, I'm going to touch you now. and I could say, you're my friend. We've had conversations that got pretty deep early on sometimes. But I'm not trying to proselytize him. I am just being a friend. That's what this chaplaincy is about. It's not to go out and proselytize for a particular faith. Now, this chaplain will have to provide a statement of faith because you look at military chaplains. I have a relative who's married to a full bird colonel chaplain, just retired recently, and he had to have from his denomination a letter showing that they approved him going for that. And I don't know all the details, but that's just part of it. So that will have to be included, but this is not something to be used as a proselytizing effort necessarily, but it is.
But would they be allowed to?
Well, why don't we let our witnesses talk about that a little bit.
But again, this is your bill that you're bringing forward. So I'm asking, would you be willing to put that in statute that they would not be able to?
Before I take off, and I think you and I may discuss this some more, one word that the witnesses behind this expert may say Rusty doesn't know what he's talking about. But using the word religious in this, that's whether I'm Methodist, Baptist, or that's what I see, that a chaplain is trying to provide a specific religion. I don't believe that that's what a chaplain is. When you look at the chaplains that serve, you do see Protestant, you do see Catholic, but you also see a percentage there from other religions from around the world that serve in this position. So it's a faith, God-based position. It's not Rusty Black, a Methodist, trying to sell anything in church. That's what this person, male or female, are trained to do, is to help me, the individual, whether it's spiritually or in other areas of my life, perform better. And before I do have to leave, I want to add this part, and I may not have answered your question at all, but staff, I believe, in today's world, need it as much as anybody do. They need it, and some of the information that Dr. Gwaltney was, I expected some of it, but it was kind of eye-opening on some of the things that are going on within our schools, because where I taught at, not those problems, right? We all know that. Very limited.
And Senator, I know you got to leave, so can I jump in real quick? Just I know you have to leave. So again, we'll continue this conversation offline too. You know, as I was thinking about this, I was going back through and thinking about how we wrote that statute when we explicitly delineated that if a school wants to offer a course on the Bible, that they could, even though most likely they could already do that on any religious text to look at historical or literary purposes. But you know, one of the things we did there in statute, in chapter 170, was a course shall not endorse, favor, promote, disfavor, show hostility towards any particular religion, non-religious faith, or religious perspective. So some of those things, again, are things that I would like us to work on if this is anything that moves forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you, senators. Anyone to testify in, well, did you have a question or anything before I moved on? No? Okay. To testify in support, please move forward. We definitely got to keep our comments brief. We have several bills we still have to leave or have to hear, so.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to be here this morning. My name is Timothy Faber, and I'm here to support Senate Bill 49 and 118. When I was growing up, we were never concerned with school shootings. Bullying was minimal. Mental health issues were practically unheard of, and suicide, at least among school-aged children, was unheard of. But we live in a different world now. We have thrown money into education. We've thrown money to school counselors, to mental health, but these efforts have had little effect in solving the problems in our schools. Having addressed the physical, emotional, mental, psychological, and every other avenue of help, we come to this point where the only help we have not addressed is spiritual. Humans are inherently spiritual beings, and when the spirit of a person is sick, only a spiritual solution can heal. Our military recognizes the value of spiritual care by providing chaplains to our men and women in uniform. Hospitals provide chaplains to their patients as a recognition that spiritual care enhances the physical healing. Our prisons provide chaplains to those who are incarcerated because they recognize that the same factors that lead a person to crime are also the same factors that spiritual care can resolve. If you step out the hall in the pictures of all the senators, there is a chaplain listed. So I don't know if they still do or not, but the Senate here used to at least have a chaplain. And in fact, our public schools often allow chaplains after a tragedy has occurred because there's a recognition that chaplains can provide comfort, hope, and healing. But why must we wait for a tragedy to occur before allowing our students to avail themselves of the services of a chaplain, of a person trained to provide hope, comfort, and healing to a person's spirit? Why not be proactive? Why not make this resource available to students before a crisis or tragedy strikes? There are several other states, including Texas, Florida, and Louisiana, that have already passed legislation giving their schools the freedom to have chaplains. And in those schools that have chaplains, there has been up to an 80% reduction in teen pregnancy, a 37% increase in graduation rates, a dramatic reduction in school violence. And for those schools who have had chaplains for at least 2 years or more, there have been no suicides. Remember, this is all voluntary on the part of the school and on the part of the students and staff. No one is coerced into using the services of a chaplain. Coercion would certainly violate the Establishment Clause. But chaplains are allowed under the Free Exercise Clause. So I ask you to please vote do pass on Senate Bill 49 and 118.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? See none. Anyone else to testify in support, please come forward. Remember to fill out a witness form.
Hello. My name is Johnny Davis, Chief Development Officer with the National School Chaplain Association. Thank you for having me today. School chaplain legislation is a critical and bipartisan measure to introduce chaplains into our public schools. This initiative seeks to address the urgent challenges facing students, teachers, and schools across our state and nation, including escalating mental health concerns, rising violence, and teacher burnout. For over 250 years, chaplains have played a vital role in shaping our nation's moral and spiritual foundations. Their ability to provide care to individuals from all walks of life, regardless of race, belief, culture, and orientation, has made them invaluable in institutions like the military, hospitals, prisons, and corporations. Today, their unique skills are critically needed in our schools. Stress, anxiety, and burnout among teachers are at an all-time high. Teachers are consistently tested at the same stress levels as first responders, but unlike first responders, they don't have access to chaplains. Anxiety, depression, and hopelessness among school-age children is the highest in the U.S. recorded history. Additionally, there's a nationwide shortage of licensed professional counselors. All of these challenges have been proven to dissipate with the presence of chaplains. We provide certified chaplains to over 33,000 schools in 23 countries, and the data shows a dramatic decrease in anxiety, depression, violence, teen pregnancies, and absenteeism. Our results also show an increase in graduation rates, goal setting, respect for authority among students, and a profound effect on teachers that reduce stress and anxiety and creates higher job satisfaction. Our data was so compelling that Texas legislators used it to support the Texas Chaplain Act, the first state chaplain bill signed into law in June 2023. However, our results aren't alone. Remarkably, the research conducted by Dr. Lisa Miller, a leading clinical psychologist at Columbia University, showed the same results from individuals who had regular interactions with chaplains. This data is used by the U.S. Army in their Chaplains Initiative, and it's published right on their website. Chaplaincy isn't a new or experimental idea. The results aren't anecdotal. Nearly 250 years of case study shows its effectiveness. Chaplains are uniquely equipped to bridge critical gaps. They provide trauma care and crisis intervention, which is why they're brought in after tragedy or crisis. Chaplains make schools safer. But I appeal to you today that their presence is needed now because an ongoing crisis exists among our students and teachers, and they need our help. Please pass this bill in Missouri and join the growing number of Americans who want to bring lasting change and hope again to our public schools.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Any questions? Proceed, Senator.
Good morning. Thanks for being with us. Could you share again where you're from?
Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Okay, thank you.
Well, as a veteran, you know, one thing I always dealt with a lot of chaplains in the military, and one thing I think people often misinterpret really what a chaplain does or how they operate. It's not like some street walking pastor that's trying to proselytize everyone that walks by. That's not how they operate. They're there if somebody's seeking need, and they're that sort of resource if someone's seeking that, and they let you know that they're there for you. But there's always that misconception that they're just there as some initiative to proselytize people, and that's not that was not my experience in the military. There were rabbis, there were Muslim, every walk of faith was potentially a certified chaplain, but that avenue was there for service members. So extending this to kids, I don't see why there would be any heartburn at or desire to want to squash something like this. So thank you for your testimony, and I appreciate what you're trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Andrea Heitfield, and I'm an attorney with the Pacific Justice Institute. By way of introduction, the Pacific Justice Institute is a nonprofit law firm specializing in the areas of religious freedom, parental rights, and other civil liberties. The issue before us is the constitutionality of utilizing chaplains in public schools, and that's best evaluated through the lens of the Supreme Court's handling of the Establishment Clause. To put it plainly, allowing chaplains into public schools does not violate the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. The Establishment Clause, as you know, states, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. That clause has been interpreted by the court to mean that no law shall be made to coerce one into a specific religion, and along with the Free Exercise Clause, that no law shall be made to exclude one from practicing their religion. Beginning with Marsh v. Chambers in 1983, the Supreme Court determined that maintaining the history and tradition of prayer prior to legislative session is so important that it does not violate the Establishment Clause. 1984's Catcoff v. Marsh, the court found that military chaplain programs do not violate the Establishment Clause. But it's most important that in Santa Fe Independent School District versus Doe and Lee v. Wiseman, the Supreme Court made it clear that the hallmark of violating the Establishment Clause is when there is coercion or coercive conduct. These bills that we're discussing today are not coercive. And in the absence of coercion, there is no Establishment Clause violation. Students are free to go and meet with a chaplain, but they are not coerced into meeting with a chaplain. Recently, in 2022 case, Kennedy versus Bremerton, the Supreme Court discarded the Lemon test, which was used prior to 2022 to evaluate these issues. The Lemon test was a three-part test determining if the law had a secular purpose, the effect of the law, and whether it entangled the government into religious action. Now that has been discarded, it has been discarded along with a reasonable observer standard. We now evaluate through coercion and historical practices and understanding. Now, there is no coercion here. As far as the historical practices and understanding, Justice Alito, when discussing the town of Grace v. Galloway, which concerned prayer before a town council meeting, he stated, "The practice begun by the first Congress stands out as an example of respect and tolerance for differing views, an honest endeavor to achieve inclusivity and non-discrimination, and recognition of the important role that religion plays in the lives of many Americans. Where categories of monuments, symbols, and practices with a long-standing history follow in that tradition, they are likewise constitutional." Chaplaincy programs have been upheld and used in America for over 250 years. In fact, the Constitutional Congress instituted Navy chaplaincy in November of 1775. More than a dozen states are considering similar legislation in this section because the use of chaplains is constitutionally protected, does not violate the free exercise nor the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I guess what would be your definition of coercion? I guess what's the definition of the court's definition of coercion?
To force.
To
Right? The child
force.
is not being forced to speak with a chaplain. The chaplain is just there if the child so desires.
Okay. So I just want to kind of go on, we talk about coercion and establishments, and I'll press in on, so we have science class, and we force kids, and they're forced to have to test and to learn certain areas of science that contradict their faith. So are they being coerced? And if we established a non-religion, non-theistic form of religion in terms of science and creation versus evolution?
That's a whole separate issue than chaplains in public schools.
I understand. I'm just wanting to show that we have coercion and there is, kids being forced to go against their religious beliefs already in public schools.
But there is no coercion when it comes to putting a chaplain in a school.
Right. I understand.
Children have to attend school until they're 18, right? That is a law that we have. Children are not forced to endure trauma and anxiety in school, but they do.
Right.
They're not coerced into that, but they experience it, which is why we should have chaplains in school to not coerce a child, but to be there for free.
Right. Thank you. Any questions? Proceed.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for being here this morning. Can you share where you're from?
Pacific Justice Institute,
Okay, and where do you live?
Knoxville, Tennessee.
Okay, and then where is Pacific Justice Institute still based in?
California.
California. Okay, have you been here to testify on other bills before?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so this is the first one?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and in terms of policy priorities, can you share where you all are, just very, very briefly, on other policy priorities? For example, I was looking at some historical background. Do you all still oppose gay marriage?
Yes, ma'am.
You still oppose gay marriage? Okay. Hopefully we have some folks from Missouri who can testify on this. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Anyone else testify in support? Please come forward. Please be brief and I know you've probably traveled a long way, but we're trying to get through a lot. So proceed when you're ready.
Good morning. I am from Missouri, Springfield. Okay, so good morning. I'm going to be reading today, so I have all of my information concise for you. My name is Lindsay Maurer, and I am an elementary school educator. I have worked in both public and private school systems. My public school experience was specifically at a Title I elementary school. The children on my campus were more than just academically behind. They were thoroughly disadvantaged in many aspects of their lives. Many of my students weren't having their basic needs met. Because of that, staying healthy and maintaining normal hygiene routines at home were not in place. Naturally, this creates compounding problems that manifest at school. In my experience, Title I campuses not only have extra academic support, but in extreme cases require significant psychiatric help. However, no matter the intensity of these children's cases, it is evident that additional support at school is necessary. From my perspective, these environments can be hostile, can be intense, overwhelmingly stressful for teachers and staff. My whole job as a teacher is to grow minds, to teach the necessary skills for students to be successful and prepared to advance to the next grade level. Additionally, as a teacher, I wear many hats. I acted as a parent, medic, social worker, counselor, with a little bit of cop mixed in. But I must know how to love and be sympathetic at the same time, while also knowing how to respond and react to crisis situations. Our behavioral interventionists and school counselors are so overwhelmed, so why not allow additional emotional, spiritual, and social support on campuses to help share this burden and responsibility of our students and staff, who are desperately in need. I could have used this relationship on campus myself as a Title I educator. By passing this bill, you are not only helping the students, but the staff who are emotionally spent. I'm here as a current educator to say, please see the need. There are 10,000 federal chaplains in hospitals, universities, prisons, or military and other settings, so why is the public school system excluded from this support? Chaplains provide social support to students and staff. They would also assist with crisis intervention, conflict resolution, can act as a resource for parents to help address additional support they may need. Please thoughtfully consider passing this bill. We can no longer make excuses for students' behavioral issues due to COVID or any other reason. We need to confront it and devise an innovative solution. This is one decision in the right direction to support our students in Missouri. I may not be the most eloquent speaker in this room, but I have a heart for my children and my students and my fellow educators who need support. This should not be a political issue. It's a decision for hope. Thank you.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for having us today. Senator, thank you for your service in the military. First of all, my name is Patrick Miller. I reside in Fairview, Missouri. I am the dad of Blake and Lauren and Julie's husband, so if that's all you remember about me, that's okay. I'm here to talk to you basically in favor of this bill from a different perspective. As an 18-year career firefighter, I've had the privilege of working with departments with chaplains and the disadvantage of working with a department without chaplains. I've seen families in departments. The one department that I worked with a chaplain, a story that I'd like to share is, remember a family with a house burning down in front of them. The chaplain was there. Mr. Tom was our chaplain. He was there to help them walk through that, just to be there, just to be that support role to walk through them with the worst day of their life. The flip side of that coin is I've been in a department without a chaplain, and I've seen the same scenario play out with different results from a family standing under a shade tree watching their house burn down without anyone there to help them walk through that. They're just there as their own, trying to figure out and make sense of it. The other thing that I think that we forget about from what Lindsay talked about was the safety aspect. The chaplain is another set of eyes. He just has a pulse on what's going on in the environment, and have gone through an 80-hour chaplain training course myself. We are trained to sense that. I think that these people that will volunteer to be chaplains, they're not volunteering to maybe push their agenda or anything. They're there just to make the school district a better place. With that, like I said, I just want to ask that you support this bill. Our teachers don't have the resources they need to handle these situations. Kids are coming to school, teachers are coming to school with all kinds of things going on, and they don't have the training or the support. And I'd like to ask you to support that, just to hopefully they can have an individual in there to serve as that support role and be that stable person to walk through these situations. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it. Can I show of hands, who else is going to testify in support? Okay, all right. Please come forward.
Good morning. I am retired Army chaplain Peter Dismore, just retired out of the Pentagon 4 years ago, served for 43 years in the chaplaincy. And I'm here to support the idea of chaplaincy because I have seen the benefit that we've provided to many soldiers like yourself in my many years in the service. I also recognize the questions that you have raised about putting some appropriate parameters upon the chaplaincy qualifications as to what they should do, because that is, I think, very important, which is why in the Army we have qualified people that are performing that duty, not just someone who desires but hasn't been trained in that. And so I think that's very valuable. It also brings the aspect of providing that support to the people in need, because they know they're receiving quality training. And I think that's valuable to help people that have emotional, spiritual needs that a chaplain can provide. And so I'm here to say, yes, it would be good with the appropriate boundaries and qualifications that would be put in for this. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your testimony and your service. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Anyone to testify in opposition, please come forward. Please remember to fill out a witness form.
My name is Brian Kaler, and I lead Word and Way, which is a Christian nonprofit that's been here in Missouri since 1896. And as a Baptist minister and the father of a public school child, I'm concerned about this legislation, and I want to highlight two really significant problems with it, or with the bills. The first is it's a chaplain in name only, because there aren't actually requirements in the legislation itself about who can be a chaplain. Right? Unlike all of the other examples that we've heard, the military, for instance, has a lot of qualifications As you noted, not just, the street preacher who's yelling at you trying to proselytize cannot become a military chaplain. There are requirements. There's actually nothing in this legislation that would prevent a school district from hiring that street preacher to come in and be the school chaplain. There's nothing in there at all. There's no requirements. They're using the word chaplain without any requirements for it. Same with our Department of Corrections. There's a lot of qualifications because a chaplain is different than merely a pastor or a volunteer Sunday school teacher or just a happy evangelist. A chaplain in a lot of these other roles are an administrator because their job is not merely to proselytize and to push their own faith. Their job is to facilitate so that all people, regardless of their faith tradition, can worship and experience faith as they so desire. So they actually have to administrate the religious services occurring for other faith traditions, right? There's a very different role there when we're talking about chaplains. So that's the first thing we need to be very clear about here. If we're going to have a school chaplain program, let's make sure we actually have some strong requirements about who a chaplain is, other than they can pass a background check and they're not a sexual predator. I mean, those are great, baselines for anybody walking into our public schools, but that does not make someone a chaplain. The second problem is there's also nothing in this legislation that would prevent proselytization. And again, when we're talking about school children, we've also heard some conversations about teachers and staff, and that is different because they're adults, right? And so a chaplain for the staff and the teachers would create a very different set of concerns. That's what makes school different than the military and the Department of Corrections and workplaces, and even here with your own chaplain, is we're talking about minors. And so we have to be much more careful to make sure that we're not violating the parental rights and that we're not violating the rights of parents and their faith communities to be the ones that provide the spiritual care and nurturement and instruction that we want. I mean, as much as my son might claim that going to school is like going to prison, it is actually quite different. When he gets to come home every day, he's free to go to a church on the weekend, right? So there are opportunities for spiritual care, which makes the chaplaincy program less significant than it is in like a situation like the military or prison, where people don't have the opportunity to go to their local faith community whenever they want to for services, right? That's why we help create chaplaincy programs in those places. But I'm also concerned about the concern of proselytization because of the leading organization behind this bill, the National School Chaplains Association, we've already heard from, as we heard from one of the bill sponsors, a reference to their leader. On their website, they proclaim that we are God's representatives on school campuses. And Rocky Malloy, the leader of the organization, has said that good news, prayer is back in school. School chaplaincy is the first opportunity in 60 years to recover religious liberty lost when prayer was kicked out of school in 1962. To make prayer a school in reality, please give your best gift to the National School Chaplain Association. Right? So you already see that there's a goal here. It's not a generic chaplaincy program. It's a proselytization school. Let's get unconstitutional school prayer, government prayer back into schools. I mean, by the way, let's just be very clear. As long as there are math tests, there will always be prayer in school. All right. Voluntary prayer is very different than government prayer. But we can see from the goals, the stated public goals of the organization that wrote this legislation for Texas and then Florida and Louisiana, now here, their goal is to push God and prayer in public schools. That concerns me a lot, especially when there are no guardrails in this legislation. So as a Baptist minister, as a product of the public school system, and as a father of a public school child, I urge you to vote against this bill. I'm happy to take any questions.
I'm just perplexed by your test as a Baptist minister. You're against, I guess being an ambassador of God.
Well, historically, Baptists, believed in the separation of church and state, and I still hold to that. Not all of them believe it anymore. When Thomas Jefferson,
where is that in the Constitution?
That's a great question. Let me explain this. So it's actually, we do get the phrase from Thomas Jefferson's letter. You may have heard of him. He's kind of a significant figure and seems to know quite a bit about the founding of our country. And he wrote that letter actually to a group of Baptists. And the reason why he wrote it to Baptists is he was actually using our language. Roger Williams, who founded Rhode Island, the first colony that actually.
But you didn't answer my question. Was they were saying they were being ambassadors of God. Is that not what every Christian's job is to be?
Yeah, but we think that that's not done through state coercion because we were persecuted by the state and the collusion of church and state. And so the issue of coercion here is if someone doesn't have the right to say no, then they don't have the right to say yes. And that's why Baptists have believed in the separation of church and state. And it is a constitutional principle. It's true, you won't find the words in there. You also won't find the phrase religious liberty in the Constitution. But guess what? It's a constitutional principle based on the First Amendment and Article 6, just like separation of church and state is a constitutional principle based on the First Amendment and Article 6.
Well, I think you're mincing words of an organization just saying that we need, people of faith being able to be there for you, saying that they're representatives of God. I mean, that's a statement that every Christian, and you claim to be, that should be what you say to everyone as well. So I guess you're using it as a negative when they're just stating that they're there for children if they're sought by those children.
Right, but if their mission,
Did you ever serve in the military?
No, I have not, sir.
Okay, so you've never been around a chaplain program?
No, I didn't say that. I haven't been around. I do know military chaplains. I have been around other chaplaincy programs, and again, they have strict requirements of who can be a chaplain. But I have not been ministered to by a military chaplain.
So that's why this is a chaplain program that they're trying to pass. It's not going to the Baptist seminary and saying we're going to start getting Baptist ministers.
There's nothing in the legislation
Well, it would be the local school board putting forth the capability to be able to put those parameters in place, giving that local control of that local governance to ensure those parameters are in place.
Well, see, that's what I don't understand then why you think you need this legislation at all. Because, in fact, there was a requirement saying you're not requiring anyone to do anything, but you actually are. The last clause in the legislation is actually requiring school boards to take their time instead of focusing on things that will actually improve the education of all students to debate this particular issue, to make a decision, yes or no. And we saw in most of the other states that all the larger school districts all said no because they saw this to be a really bad idea, that they'd rather have licensed, certified school counselors to help students instead of uncertified, unlicensed, whoever to be the chaplain.
No offense, I'm blown away that you come and you actually testify as a Baptist minister, but I've been on this committee since I've been a senator, and you've testified against any and every single religious anything put forth before this body.
That's right. I don't want coercion in public schools.
Anyone have any questions for? Thank you. Anyone else to testify against?
Good morning. I'm Dr. Gwyneth Woodhouse, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak on SB 49 and SB 118, which would allow Missouri's public schools to employ or accept volunteer religious chaplains. I oppose this bill because I believe that no faith should impose itself on others in our public institutions, especially under the guise of providing student support. I also believe in constitutional values, and I know that if this bill passes and schools adopt a chaplain policy, all religions must be allowed the same opportunity to participate. As a parent and a member of the Satanic Temple, I will be first in line to request that my school hire a minister of Satan from our Missouri congregation to provide chaplain support to my student. My child, along with the children of thousands of TST members in this state, must be given equal access to guidance aligned with our religious values, including bodily autonomy, critical thinking, and resistance to tyranny. And I won't be the only Missouri parent and TST member making that request. Some of you may believe this bill avoids legal liability by leaving policy decisions to individual school districts. In reality, this bill forces Missouri schools districts into a legal minefield by compelling them to take a stance on a highly controversial issue and exposing them to inevitable legal challenges. This bill doesn't support our students or schools, it abandons them. They will be left to clean up a mess that SB 49 and SB 118 legally required them to make. Whether intentional or not, this bill guarantees the Satanic Temple's chaplains an equal opportunity to serve in Missouri's public schools, and I will ensure my church receives the same access as any other. If you're truly committed to welcoming ministers of Satan to support Missouri's students, then passing SB 49 or SB 118 is the logical next step. Thank you, and hail Satan.
Good morning. My name is Minister Virgil Ovid of the Satanic Temple. I would actually just like to second all of that, and if this bill does pass, Well, I would like to offer my services to any school in the state of Missouri on the fact of we have religious freedom. You're taking away vital resources for students and delegating them to something that is not necessarily need. We have an adult literacy rate of 18%, and instead of upping that, we're worried about putting churches back in school. Even as a chaplain, that's not necessary. Hire counselors and people who went to school to help these people, not people who are going to push faith on them. As a minister, I don't push my faith on anyone. I'm well versed in lots of religions for that fact. It's knowledge. Knowledge of everyone helps. You learn how to respect others. You learn how to be a decent person. And counselors would help these children more than ministers or preachers or anyone from a church, because the counselors are going to give them the skills to handle their emotions and everything else, rather than saying, let it be in God's hands. Because it's not in God's hands, it's in our hands. As a parent, you're not going to tell your child, let God figure it out. No, you're going to teach your child how to handle the situation. So that is all I have to say on this. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. So you're testifying against, but you're a minister, and you said you would support you becoming a chaplain if this passed. So you do, and you don't support the bill?
I would much rather the resources be used on helping children in other ways rather than this.
Yeah, we would rather not have chaplains in schools, but if this passes, we have chaplains, satanic chaplains at the ready to support our students.
But you just said that wouldn't support students. So you wouldn't be helping students if this were to become law? You'd be hindering their capability?
I'm not a licensed counselor, so.
Okay.
Yeah, we believe that there are other resources out there that are not religiously affiliated who would be better able to serve these students. But if you feel the need to put chaplains in schools, then we'll be there. We'll be at the ready. We have ministers of Satan ready to go.
Okay. All right. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else to testify against? Please proceed.
Good morning. My name is David Lee Brush. I'm with the Missouri Equity Education Partnership, and we are opposed to this bill for many of the same reasons that people have already said. Our concern is there just aren't a lot of guardrails to keep students from being coerced, not coerced, but there's not a lot of guardrails in here, not a lot of definitions about what a chaplaincy is. And I wasn't in the military, but I have been to hospitals, and I'm a Catholic. And so sometimes the people that came to my hospital room were Catholic, sometimes they were not. And I appreciated that support, but they always asked me if I wanted it. I am so sorry, this microphone. One of the things that we kind of are concerned about is that Missouri has a growing population of diverse school districts that have not only cultural diversity but religious diversity. And sometimes there is a disconnect between the people on the school board and their demographic background and the people that they're serving. For example, I taught in the Bayless district, and it is over 50% non-Christian. There are Buddhists, Hindus, Muslims, and Jewish students, as well as Christians, in the Bayless school district. And the Bayless school board is made up of almost exclusively white middle-class Christian people. So when they're looking at their chaplaincy, are they going to be able to divorce themselves of this Christian ideology that is their background, to be able to provide a chaplain that reflects their population? It doesn't seem like a big deal, but an example of this is several years ago, we were trying to decide what play to do, and a lot of people are like, let's do Godspell. Godspell is easy. We could do it, if we have to do it through COVID, we could actually do it on Zoom. It would be great. And I'm like, wait a minute. We have a lot of students that are Muslim. Are their parents going to be comfortable with them doing Godspell? It is literally the story of Jesus. So we kind of surveyed our parents, and a lot of our parents are like, no, we would not let our children participate in that play because it's Christian and we're not. And so we really believe that there needs to be some guardrails in this bill through definitions. We agree that there should be licensed professional counselors because religious training counseling is different from licensed professional counseling. School children are going to go to whatever chaplain is hired there, and they're not going to have an option to have a chaplain that maybe is from their religious background. And I understand chaplaincy is different, and they're trained in non-denominational and multi-denominational education. But again, we just would like to see the guardrails. And finally, we have been advocates on almost every bill moving public funding to not having it be used in non-public schools. And so if they're going to pay the chaplains, and they're going to be paying them for religious schools, charter schools, and possibly parochial schools, and also paying religious leaders to serve our children, and we do not favor using public funds for that kind of thing. So all that being said, I'm open for any questions. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? See none, thank you very much.
Do I just leave my form like right here?
Yes,
Okay,
please.
perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else to testify in opposition? We need to really be brief if we could, please. We've got several bills still here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll keep it brief. Tori Schaefer with the ACLU of Missouri. We're here to speak in opposition to both of these bills. As the folks who spoke before me very effectively covered, we are specifically worried about a violation of the Establishment Clause. We're also worried about coercion. And we're also worried about the lack of a definition of a chaplain in this law as currently written, right? There could be the possibility of an organization starting to give folks a certification to be a chaplain, right? We don't know what those requirements are, but the requirements in Missouri schools to be a school counselor is a master's degree in counseling. You also get extensive training on how to coach kids through difficult situations. It's actually school counselor weeks. We're going to have a whole bunch of school counselors up in the building talking to y'all today. But what you'll hear is they go through extensive training to have these jobs and to be able to coach kids through difficult situations and have really tough conversations. And what we would hate to see is those folks being replaced by chaplains, which again is not defined in this bill. And like I said earlier, we're also worried about coercion, especially when we're talking about kiddos, right? Even if we were to put guardrails in place in this bill, there is a chance that an 8-year-old wouldn't know that they're being coerced, right? That is a really hard thing to prove, even if we were to put exceptions in this bill to actively prevent that. Any questions?
Any questions? See none, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else to testify in opposition?
My name is Laura Green. This is Lonnie. Lonnie, you want to come sit next to
Oh,
me?
yeah, need you to speak into the microphone. and
Sure.
introduce- Yeah,
My
thank
name
you.
is Laura Green. I'm from St. Charles, Missouri. And this is Lonnie. She's going to be sitting with me because I don't have childcare today. So I wrote a statement. It should be quick. Hello, my name is Laura Green. I'm a constituent of St. Charles, Missouri. I'm here as a religious studies scholar with a degree from Missouri State University and as a concerned parent that will eventually have a child in our public school system. I'm here today to testify against SB 118 and its sponsor, Michael Moon. At its base, this bill is unconstitutional, no matter what has been said here today. It seeks to allow a chaplain, which is poorly defined in this bill, to be hired by public schools and charter schools. Private schools, I don't have a problem with. Though this law tries to skirt the Constitution by not offering payment to these individuals, this is still directly against separation of church and state, in my opinion. Beyond the legalities and lawsuits that would surely follow this decision, I want to point out the real security concerns I have regarding the placement of clergy in our school. Though I understand a background check is promised in this law, I'm sure the members of this council are aware that background check is merely a paid electronic service. It does not conduct interviews or background checks as far as investigations. You should be aware that in 2022, the Southern Baptist Convention released an extensive document outlining cover-ups of sex crimes, many involving children. And while I won't get into it, I'm sure we're aware of the same clergy shuffling and controversy in the Catholic Church. Finally, I'd like to note that Mr. Moon's voting record speaks to how he views children. In 2018, while serving in the Missouri House, then Representative Michael Moon,
we're not gonna attack senators in
I would
testimony.
question if this man has the right, what it takes to say who could be in contact with our children based on his voting record, which is public. As an atheist and an activist, I will leave you with a realistic hypothetical based on my knowledge of Mr. Moon's anti-trans agenda and what I see as his true goal and the goal of his cohorts. When a student comes out as trans in Missouri, will the school chaplain be the first call? That's my question for you. And that's my statement. And I'll fill out one of these for you. I'm sure you would remind me. Have a wonderful day. Come on, Lonnie, let's go.
Anyone, ma'am, hold on.
Oh,
Any
I'm so
questions?
sorry.
Okay, seeing none, thank you.
No, thank you so much.
Anyone else to testify in opposition? Anyone to testify for informational purposes? Please come forward.
Lisa Panett, Armorvine, and we're actually testifying in support of the bill. We think it benefits the children. And since we're giving shout outs here, all hail King Jesus. And that ends my testimony.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions? See none. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Anyone for informational purposes? See none. That ends the hearing. Sorry, we're gonna end the hearing and move on to other bills that we have.